Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Have you ever spent a night alone, locked up in a hospital room? It's not incredibly unlikely, as most people do spend some time in a hospital at some point of their lives. And I tell you, sleeping in those rooms, alone, is one of the most vexatious experiences you can have. An uncomfortable bed, curtains that, quite literally, block out all the light of the outside, and, if you're like me, an ECG monitor, beeping in rhythm with your pulse. Now, the sound of an ECG monitor can be turned off, but I guess everyone has to have a safety totem, no matter how annoying it is, and that sound is mine while I'm in a hospital. A kid won't let go of that stuffed animal you give it, because the child feels protected, even if it is inconvenient to have it in the bed. Now, let me tell you about a time spent in a very peculiar hospital room. You see, I happen to have severe asthma, and as of the time this story takes place I had level 3 moderate persistent asthma, which basically means that I had to use my rescue medicine, the inhaler people walk around with, if you're not familiar with asthma medicine, at least once a day. There are several other specifications, but that's not important. What's important for this chronicle of mine is the fact that I, while having gotten used to hospital rooms, found them incommodious, and that has not changed since my stay in room 407. If you're in a hospital, it's not strange if a person has died in the room you're in without your knowledge, and if you stay a lot in hospitals, that's something you end up accepting. You'll probably even acquiesce the fact that you, personally, have a high risk of becoming one of those unknown deaths one day. Now, as I said, most people accept it, and I like to think of myself as a pretty ordinary person, at least mentally, but I do have to opine that what happened to me in room 407 is far from anything any ordinary person would regard normal. As of the day I first entered the room, I had just had a rather major flare-up, one of a high enough degree for me to be put in a hospital for 4 nights. At first, I was registered into the emergency ward, but I stayed there for only a few hours before they decided that I could be moved to another ward for people in less imminent danger. It wasn't the sure-to-die ward, but it was neither the happy-go-lucky everyone lives ward. It was probably completely random that I happened to be registered there at a time during which room 407 was the first unoccupied room of the first hallway of the ward I just so happened to be assigned to, but well, sometimes you just feel like something's destiny, you know. Well, I felt like shit that first night, so I was probably pretty bad at picking up all details. I wasn't in the best state of mind, to say the least, nor was I in the best state of being, physically. Essentially, what I'm saying is that I'm not a reliable storyteller, and that I could very well be insane, limiting my credibility even more. Look, what I really mean to tell you is that I don't want any of this to be true, just to be some fictive event that I've made up in my mind. It would just make my life so much easier. I guess I actually have to get on with the story now. Well, so it started with me being rolled in a wheelchair to my new room by a nurse I never saw again after that. I guess her shift ended after that, and she had to do work in another wing or something similar. Have you ever had that feeling that something's not right, the feeling that there's impending doom, death, or anything bad like that? I haven't. Entering room 407, there was nothing strange at all in the atmosphere. It was, to the utmost degree, a completely ordinary room, or so it felt. However, as my eyes scanned the room holding none but 2 beds, 2 nightstands, 2 ECG monitors and a small TV, I found that there was an area of the wall, right by the bathroom door, which had been painted over. Although faint, it was obviously a few shades brighter, and the strokes were in a different pattern from the rest of the walls. Of course I didn't give it much thought at the time. What reason did I have not to disregard it? I've been in and out of hospitals at least once a year since I was a child. I've seen plenty people vomit, urinate and bleed on walls. Those are common traits of sick people, after all. No, I ignored it, and just allowed the nurse to roll me to the other side of the wall and help me onto the bed closer to the windows. Connecting me to my ECG monitor, inserting the oxygen contributor into my nose, putting the TV remote on my nightstand and pushing the curtains closed, she walked towards the single exit the room held, stopping just before exiting to ask whether I wanted her to turn the lights off or not. Being tired, from having a major flare-up and all, I accepted, desiring rest more than anything else in the world. Turning off the lights, the nurse I never saw again after that told me that someone would come to check up on me in case my heartbeat had a considerable development, and then she left. I fell asleep almost immediately. There still was nothing strange about my stay at this hospital as of yet, at least not that I could pick up. As I've said, it's absolutely possible that there was nothing strange at all, and that I should be locked into an institution, and I'd love if that was the case, but if I were insane I'd be unable to accept insanity as a reality to begin with. No. Insanity isn't a simple thing. Anyway, fast forward a couple of hours, and suddenly I'm forced awake by what I experience as an inability to breathe. Yes, I know, I should be used to that sort of thing having third-degree asthma, but I'm the kind of person who barely even knows who he is before my second cup of coffee, and that's when waking up naturally. Being suddenly awoken like that is disheartening, to say the least. If you've ever experienced sleep paralysis you should know what it was like for me at this point, but for me it was an altogether new jeopardy. Inability to move, trouble breathing and utter loneliness. For me, those three hurdles combined could very well mean death unless I were able to get my hands on my inhalator. Of course, at the time I had a tube flowing oxygen and cortisone into my nose, so I wouldn't actually suffocate, but that's not the first thing that comes to mind when you're panicking. Trying my best and more to move, to get up and find my inhalator, all I did was fail, but that didn't stop me from continuing to try. My eyes moving around the room fast enough to make me dizzy, I did however end up catching something in the corner of my vision, something that seemed to be glowing. It was just outside the effective range of my left eye, the one facing the inner wall, so I couldn't quite make it out, but it did come from the spot that had been painted over, that's for sure. Through a magnitude of pressure from my mind, I was able to move my head just a slight bit over. It hurt my neck, that's how much force I had to push into it at the time. The glow that had been in the corner of my eye until now was now visible to my eyes, and there, on the wall that had been painted over, I could see a faint red glow in the formation of a face. I screamed. Despite inability to even slightly move my lips and something that felt like a 2-ton rock on my chest, I pushed the little air I held in my lungs through my vocal cords into a scream. I screamed, and the glowing picture of a face that until now had not held focus on anything at all turned toward me, and that grotesque, fake and inhuman visage, it smiled. The glowing line meant to resemble a mouth became wider, its ends turning upwards, and that monstrous silhouette, it grinned at me. Eternities passed, and for every moment of those eternities I felt like that misshapen glow semblance of a mask, it neared me. It pushed outward from the wall, trying to take on the shape of. I don't know exactly what it was at that time, but it was nowhere near a human shape. It was a shadow without a base, and it wanted to leave the two-dimensional realm of shadows, and I screamed. After several eternities, or at least what felt like it, the door to room 407 was slammed open, allowing 2 nurses to burst in, a third one following after at a slightly slower pace and turning on the lights as she entered. The 2 that burst in started asking me things as they checked my values and gave me rescue medicine, but I can't remember much of that. My mind had tuned out sounds completely, probably so I wouldn't have to deal with the sound of my own voice, and all that my consciousness knew was the fading image of a faked face on the wall of my hospital room, hidden behind a coat of bright, white paint. Exactly what passed after that, I cannot remember. It's fuzzy, several blurry images of me shouting strange things at the nurses, before finally falling asleep after they gave me some injection, probably some form of sedative. I assume that they wrote it up as a panic attack or something of the kind in the journal, and that it had been dealt with. Waking up the next morning, I lacked any memory of the events of the night, and would go about my day as any other patient, watching some TV and trying to rest as much as possible. For some reason, I felt unpleasant whenever I closed my eyes in there, though, and as I lacked memory of the occurrence of the nighttime, that felt quite strange to me. Not until the second night of my stay in room 407 would I come to remember what had happened during my first night there. I had fallen asleep in the evening, still feeling a sour emotion whenever I closed my eyes, but disregarding it as my body picking up some stench from someone that had died in the room earlier which my mind wouldn't pick up, or some other side effect of being in a hospital room of over 20 years of age. The second night I spent in room 407 started out not unlike my first night there. I woke up with major problems breathing and an inability to move. This night, however, I started calming down a bit, possibly as a result of having faced the same issue the night earlier, a memory which slowly started returning to me as I laid, locked to my bed by bonds I didn't, and still don't, fully understand. First, I started remembering the stress put onto my chest, and as I tried to feel that I realized that it wasn't just a pressure on my chest. I was experiencing dominating pressure above and around not only my chest, but also my limbs and neck. It was far too dark to see anything, so even though I moved my eyes downward I was unable to see whether there was actually something holding me down or not, but the darkness felt more concentrated, I guess would be the best word, around my body. Like a spider's web, having been spun around me to keep the prey, myself, stuck to the feeding ground. Of course I was scared twice to hell and back by this point, but I didn't scream at this point. Partially because the weight holding me down was far heavier than it had been the night before, making it nigh impossible to make even the slightest sound, but also because my memory of the previous night had mostly returned by this point, and I remembered exactly what it was that had brought me the attention of that golem of feigned humanity. While I have never been a particularly lucky person, in the face of something you acknowledge greater than death, a man will take any chance he has. Slowly, with determination and fear, rather than the quick force of the panic state I had been in the previous night, I forced my head downwards sideways to my left. At this point I realized that I actually had control of my face, unlike what I had thought the night before, noticed, would fit better, and that the ability to shut my eyes remained within my arsenal, which I did. I pushed my eyelids together with the force of 1,001 warriors, because I was afraid of the creature that I might or might not see when I turned my eyes there. If you've ever woken in the middle of the night and felt like there's something watching you, ready to murder you the moment it finds out that you're awake, then you'll almost know what I was going through at this time. The main difference, however, is that I at this point knew for a fact that if the being was there, then it would already know that I was awake, and would have nothing stopping it from coming to my side. Look, I've never been afraid of the dark. I never had time for such trivialities, as I was often fearing for my own life due to failure of my own body. My fears were strange words the doctors told me about, things they would only ever tell me about during the brightest time of the day. I guess they did that so I wouldn't associate the dark with everything bad, but instead it resulted in the opposite. I started fearing midday as the day they'd tell me I had to stay in that uncomfortable hospital room stinking of alcohol. Night was the time I felt safest, really, because the only ones who'd visit me then were nice nurses who always told me it would get better and words of the like. Yet, despite this love of the dark I've carried since I was a child, I feared the darkness of room 407 more than anything else I had ever feared, and I still, to this day, do. But fears are meant to be confronted, or we wouldn't be afraid of them to begin with, or at least that's the logic that hit me that excruciating night. I opened my eyes. Nothing. Nothing at all. No lights. No face. No grin. It was gone. I was free, or so I thought. In my euphoria, my eyes finally became fully adjusted to the darkness of a nighttime hospital room, and I saw it. A faint red light was shining downwards from the other side of the second bed of room 407, a faint red light which just barely illuminated enough to show off the outline of a hardly humanoid existence of concentrated darkness. A faint, demonic light, which slowly turned upwards to face the current human resident of its home, a light which took on the shape of two non-blinking eyes, two small slits to make up a nose, and a huge, curved line, carrying several teeth like ends, making out an inhuman grin, a totem of evil, darkness, and the shadow of room 407. The light was brighter than it had been the day before. I can assure you that as sure as I can tell you that this text was written, and the light reflected against the floor back onto the shadow creature to showcase a figure that, while more human than yesterday, still resembled a demon more than a man. Think of a skeleton with skin sitting tight over it, make the bones half as thin and double the length, and then turn that into darkness, and you have the basic shape of this thing. Triple the length of the fingers, make them razor sharp, and take away the pinky to get as good of an understanding of its hand as can be said in words. Its face, it resembled an inverted Rorschach test. Those eyes looked like mirrored ink blobs that could move, taking in the world with vision in every angle from the eyes, the nostrils like stabbings that had been allowed to bleed, and that mouth, it looked like someone had stolen a blood moon and turned it into a smile. A smile carrying only the grotesqueness and monstrosities and rotting stench of death and undeath. That elongated, spidery entity twitched, like how a mannequin would move if it suddenly were given that power. It turned the side of its head downwards, to an angle that no man would be able to replicate without snapping his neck, and it continued grinning as it slowly started straightening first its right leg, then its left leg, all in short, spastic movements. No creature of flesh and bones would be able to recreate the maneuvering given by that devil-given form, for it would destroy its own body several times over. No joints or bones could hinder that definite darkness of death's deliverance, for there was no such things in the artificial body it wielded. That body, it simply, was, so to speak. Slowly but surely, one small and quick jerk at a time, as if it was trying to get used to its own physical presence, the being of compressed darkness stood up, grinning at me the entire time. There was something strange about its countenance, though. For every twitch it made with its body, it was as if its face was pressed together, only for a slight moment. Despite fearing for my life, and more, this small action that the existence I feared more than death performed, it fascinated me, and I was completely engrossed in it. Pain. I whispered for myself as I finally understood this habit it had. Just as it had seemed earlier, this creature must have been getting used to this new body it had created, and it was in pain while doing so. This abomination was experiencing the tormenting torture of being born, but even despite that suffering it wished to reach me, to fill me with the darkness that it had been born from. Fear not the boogeyman, but the reason he is hiding. That sentence. I had heard it once during my childhood. It was something my brother told me when he visited me in the hospital for the first time. A comment regarding the general emotion expressed from a hospital room, I believe. He said that a hospital room wasn't where the monsters lived, but the place they didn't dare go, for in a place already reigned by death, they would have no power. And this creature, visiting me now, it was an embodiment of the discomfort, the disease, the death and the darkness of this room 407. The one the boogeymen feared. It's strange, but in a moment of panic your brain will do practically everything to take your mind off of the situation at hand, so that you won't do something idiotic. That's probably a trait we picked up to be able to think through situations at hand without putting our emotions first when facing a logical danger, like a beast standing far taller than ourselves, but this enemy of mine wasn't a logical danger, and so the panic I didn't know I was experiencing felt comfortable. A complete silence. My pulse wasn't far above normal, and I had forgotten about my troubles breathing. The pressure on my body felt lighter, although not completely gone, as if someone had taken away part of the weight. I fear not death, for I am already destined to die, I remember thinking. Through an endless series of other nonsensical thoughts regarding different circumstances within the room, I remember that thought clearly, for as I hooked onto that thought I once again remembered my situation, my fear. My personal angel of death was gone. As my eyes again could concentrate on the room that I was in, the entity which had spawned within the room had vanished into thin air, an invisible smoke carrying the stench of rot. Yes, at this point I finally smelled the stink of rot which must have entered the room at some point, or maybe had been there all along without my noticing. Whatever the reason for that foul odor, I wanted nothing to do with it, I wanted it to be gone, and I wanted out of that room as quickly as quick can be. Hyperventilation can result in problems such as low oxygen levels, weakening of senses, lower ability to think, and loss of consciousness. That's something you easily learn from personal experience if you happen to have a condition which has dyspnea, tachypnea or any other similar symptom as one of its manifestations. It's also the kind of thing you forget the moment you have a panic attack. The weight I had experienced on my chest earlier was the least of my concerns at this time, and had completely passed my mind as I pushed myself out of bed and down onto my wheelchair, almost falling off the bed as I did. I was able to land on the chair, despite a problematic position and limited movement due to lack of oxygen, and I started rolling toward the exit at maximum speed. Even before I was able to reach it, I started lunging for the door handle, using my momentum to get closer to it without having to spin the wheels myself. Finally, I was able to grasp the opener to the gateway to heaven, to make myself free of this wretched, stinking room, and was locked. My single way of escape had been blocked, the portal out of the room stuck, unable to be opened by any means I possessed. The door, meant to allow me to leave this personal hell of mine, was locked, but there was no logical reason for that to happen. I had to have done it wrong and it just felt like it was locked. Again, I tried pulling down the door handle. Of course, it was still locked. There wasn't any reason for me to have been wrong to begin with. It was a simple door handle, push it downward, add force onto the door, and voila, your door is now open. This time though, not so much. Room 407 had me trapped, a prisoner of the safest place on earth. The irony of being locked inside a hospital room failed to pass my mind at the time. Of course, being captured in a room where I not even a minute earlier had seen something that could only be likened to a monstrosity of condensed shadow. My hand clutching the handle of the door, I turned towards the location the shade had been at earlier, and I momentarily blanked out when I saw that it was, once again, watching me, still standing there, besides the bed. A grin that had grown even larger, mocking my having gotten closer to it by my own action, struck my mind harder than a hammer to the head, and I felt my body giving up at that instant. I was sure that I would die, so what was the use in struggling? My arm, still holding the door handle, went limp, falling downwards first, soon followed by the rest of my body. I cried. That night, the second night of my stay in room 407, I wept as if I'd never wept before. Tears streamed down my face, fell down onto my knees, my nose started running, and most of all I was sobbing so I could show myself that I was crying, for I hadn't cried for many a year by this point. The boy who feared the light and never learned to cry was now stuck in the dark, weeping out his very soul to the one who would destroy him. A whispering wind filled the room as I cried, a sound unlike words, but not either like a random gust. Not living, yet not dead. The voice of that which was neither, the voice of that which would never live, and because of that would never die. The shade that had spawned in this hospital room was making some sort of sound, its stench enveloping me, and both of those increased, and I knew that it was coming for me. I would never again see the light of day, I would never again see that which was outside this room, and I would never again see another living being. Came closer, and closer, and closer, and it stopped. My vision was blurry with tears, which was worsened even more by that rotting stench, and I felt my head raised not by hands, but by a shapeless force, not unlike the pressure that had been keeping me in my bed 2 nights in a row. Concentrated darkness was right before me, an entity without morals or logic, existing only in the shade of this room, and it lifted my head without touching me. It lifted my head so it could stare into my eyes and mock me for ever having entered room 407. Despite tears making my sight cloudy and distorted, I could see the face of my nemesis, my scourge and torment. I could see its face clearer than ever before. That which is broken can only be seen as whole from broken vision. Those eyes, as shapeless as water, yet more defined than any metal, those nostrils, as if stabbed by knives, and that mouth, which had stolen the moon, and would now steal me as well. This was clearly my last moment, and in my last moment I screamed. I screamed, as if I'd never screamed before, and then I was gone. Syncope, a nurse told me the next morning. Due to lining up just with their changing of shifts, it took time before they noticed that my ECG monitor was no longer connected, and even then they just thought it as me going to the bathroom, but after a while the nurse in charge came to check me up, afraid for my well-being. She had found me on the floor in front of the door, having fallen off the wheelchair as I fainted, and then put me back into bed while keeping watch on me for half an hour before returning to her office. Apparently, there seemed to be no reason for me to have fainted at all, they said. I demanded to be moved to a new room that morning, but despite my appeals I was told that there were no other free beds in the ward. Apparently, the room I already was in had been vacated just before I was sent to that ward, and I was lucky to have a bed there at all, especially a single one in an otherwise empty room. At least, that's what she told me. I guess she never spent a night in there. I asked a few other nurses, but none of them could do anything about my request. The first nurse hadn't been lying when she told me there were no other free beds in the ward. No one would take my plea to discharge me seriously, either, probably putting it off as just somebody not being at his best due to the low oxygen levels in his blood. Clearly my mind wasn't working properly, considering that I had faced an entity born from darkness 2 nights in a row, and would most likely face it again the coming one. Now, I'm the kind of person who feels that if he's stuck in enemy territory, he at least has to prepare for any potential possibility, and be armed up to his teeth. The last 2 nights the shade had only appeared when I woke up in the middle of the night and the lights were all out, meaning that my best bet for the coming one would be to keep the lights on and not going to sleep. It seemed like the best plan at the time, especially considering that the potential outcome for me, otherwise, could be death, or worse. The day went slowly, slower than only one other day I have lived, and I couldn't help but wish that it would go even slower, that the advancing sun would just stop on the sky and let me live within its shine forever. That time would stop, just for this day, and let me stay there forever, an eternity in the blissful light of the sun. That I would never have to face the coming darkness which had haunted me for 2 nights straight, and if my plan were to fail would haunt me again the coming one. Wishes don't come true like that. No, that's what fairy tales exist for. Time passed, the sun moving over the horizon and slowly letting the darkness of the night come to take its place. A nurse came inside, doing her patrol, and asked me whether I wanted her to ready me for the night or not. Obviously I told her that I wanted to stay awake for at least a bit longer, so she left the room to continue her task, and I watched TV with the lights on as she did. Curtains open, allowing a view of the city and the sky above it to show itself to me through the windows. I was entranced by the beauty of this city of mine, the city which I lived in, and I zoned away the sound of the television as I was mesmerized by the grace of my own hometown. Appearance fairer than the most alluring of women, or at least so was the case to my eyes which, to be fair, had never bare witness to any major part of the world. As my home had never been part of the largest of metropolises, to say the least, light pollution had never been a major issue in the area, and the stars could shine up the sky without issue, hypnotizing anyone who would look at them with their beautiful inconsistencies. Waking up with a start, my body filled with dread, despite being far from anywhere near what could be considered fully awake, after only 2 nights it had become a reflex to feel bad in the darkness of room 407. That's the first thing I noticed, too. The room was, as it had been for 2 nights now, pitch black, with nothing that could be considered a light source anywhere within the room. In hindsight, I realized that it was most likely that a nurse noticed my sleeping, so she closed the curtains, and turned off the TV and the lights, but at the time I felt as if the room had been fully lit up just a moment ago, and that it was now completely pitch black. I have never believed in miracles, but I tell you, at that moment I hoped for a miracle more than I have ever hoped for something in my entire life. A miracle, a gift from God, a guardian angel, whatever, as long as it meant that I wouldn't have to face that barely humanoid creature for the 3rd night in a row. I wished, and I wished, and I wished, and I turned my head to my left. My pleas had not been answered. Standing there, at the edge of the empty bed on my side, was an entity, consisting solely of darkness so concentrated that the darkness around it seemed light, with spidery and elongated limbs that moved without anything resembling logic, piercing, yet gliding, through the air, as if it were not meant to move within this dimensional plane. As if the very concept of darkness had been given shape and forced into our realm of existence. Whoever fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster in the process. And when you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. I am not a monster. I have never been a monster, nor do I believe that I will ever be one. I am but a normal human, if even that, and I would never stand at the height of a warrior, even if given the chance. I am far too weak. And I do tell you, when I for the 3rd time saw the disgruntling, disturbing and disgusting face of that collective darkness, I was afraid as I have rarely, if ever, been at any other time of my life. The face of, not a monster, for a monster as living and this being was not, but a shade carrying the shadow of neither life nor death, or maybe both. It watched me, and it mocked me with its grin that would never, ever, ever be satisfied. A grin that could devour my soul, and feel nothing, no remorse, no regret, and not even that its hunger had been filled. No, all such things are living concepts, ideas which only we living creatures have, and that a creature that carried the stench of undeath could never understand. It was just standing there, where I had left it last night by blacking out, as if it had been waiting for me to wake up during its time, just standing there, teasing my sleeping body with its very presence. just standing there, waiting for me to acknowledge the fact that it could do so, and I'd be completely unable to do anything about it. Goading me, trying to make me try to do something about it, knowing full well that I knew that anything I did would be in vain. If I were to reach the door, it would be blocked. The windows were a no-go from the beginning. Hospitals blocked their windows to prevent patients from committing self-end. And going into the bathroom wouldn't make much difference to the situation at all, only serving to lock myself into a new corner, so there was no reason for that at all. At this point I'd actually gotten used to the weight pushing me down onto my bed, all but leaving me unable to even breathe. In the movies there's always something, one little detail that the heroes can use to their advantage, something that allows them to defeat the monster, or the psychopath, or whatever. Not here. What I was facing was a creature created solely from darkness, a shadow of reality, and the only way to defeat a shadow is to light it up. But I couldn't light it up, because it stood in my way, and I was stuck upon the bed anyway, so I couldn't try to grab the remote for the TV. Not that I think it would make any difference. Like that, with me trapped in your average uncomfortable hospital bed, it started walking. It seemed to have gotten used to its body more than last night, as it was now able to take a step without looking as if its limbs were about to fall off of it. The shade was learning, and what it was learning was to disturb me, to haunt me, and possibly to kill me. A lone tear fled my eye, running down my face before falling to the sterilized hospital bed sheets, and the being that was haunting me walked, still with difficulty, but far less so than the night before. It appeared as if the shadow creature was trying to imitate humans, as the steps it made now used the bending process of its knees far more than it had earlier. No pain could be found in its face any longer as it walked, no weird spasms with the same rhythm as the twitches it used to move. It was learning from its mistakes, and it used that knowledge to increase its proficiency. A hunter who learned to use the new weapons at his disposal, making them part of himself, no more than an extension of his own two hands. Something with an evolution rate far above that of humanity. The very embodiment of fear walked, and tear after tear left my eyes, a silent cry, a call for help that would never come. For the second time since being assigned to room 407, I wept, and I wept as the form of horror neared me, becoming more efficient at walking for every step it took. A hollow face taunting me, telling me that there was no escape and that it didn't even have to be cautious about its actions, for no one would ever come for me, anyway. The shade stopped. It stopped, right there at the foot of my bed, and it watched me like a wolf watches a lamb as the lamb searches for a way to escape, without results. It watched me, for it didn't need to catch me just yet. It knew that I had nowhere to go, and that I would provide entertainment for it if I were to try escape. I was the lamb of lambs, the one destined to die. It whispered to me. In that voice, which was neither of the living, nor of the dead, it whispered to me the secrets of the universe. The language it whispered was not one of the living or the dead either, for it was a language of information, not of voice. The secrets of the universe entered my head through the voice of that which is older than the wind, and I couldn't tune it out. I didn't understand a fraction of what I was told, of course, but the secrets of the universe entered my head whether I understood them or not. Telling me the secret to killing an immortal was some kind of sick joke it made, doing its best to laugh after saying it. The shade knew that I had understood that it was not living, and therefore could not be killed, even with techniques that could kill those that are unable to die. I was told stories of the past, the present, and an undetermined yet definite future that would not be changed by my interference. It gave me knowledge, yet left me unable to repeat what I had heard, for knowledge can only be repeated by those who speak it, never by those who talk in languages. Another sick joke, infinite knowledge with an inability to ever repeat that which I had learned. A whisper in an endless darkness, and a weeping man who felt like a child. My eyes were shut tight, for I couldn't bear witnessing that illogical smile on that inhuman face, and like that I continued weeping, just like I had been doing last night, and I hated myself for being unable to do anything. In the face of this devil I could do none, and so it just stood there, by the end of my bed, and whispered to me the secrets of the universe. Don't know how, exactly, but I must have fallen asleep eventually, for I woke up the next morning by sunshine streaming onto my face as a nurse dragged the curtains open. An immense pain filled my head, a headache of a completely different magnitude from anything else I've ever experienced. Personally, I attribute it to being given knowledge of secrets not meant for human minds, but that's not what this story's about. Now, I told you how the day before this one had been the second longest day of my life. This one was the longest. I felt as if I hadn't slept in weeks, my head was spinning, and my breathing had gotten worse as compared to how it was the day before, despite the extra oxygen intake. My average pulse was a full 12 beats per minute above what it had been the day before, which was getting closer to what it had been when I was taken in. Each second felt longer than the one before it as dusk came closer, almost giving the illusion that time had truly stopped, as I had wished it to the day before, and as I continued wishing this day. Quite obviously, this wish wasn't fulfilled, and the day continued on, just as any other day would have, except the one major difference being that to me, a nobody in a hospital, it felt many times longer than your average day would, even when stuck in a hospital with old TV reruns as your sole form of entertainment. Every single moment, an eternity in and by itself, was merely leading up to the next one, which then was leading up to the next one, and so on, and at the one of that chain of moments, I knew that I would have to face my fourth night in room 407. Tonight, I'd have to keep the curtains closed, no matter how much safer I'd feel with the window visible, since the sleep I had the night before seemed to come as a direct result of watching the stars. The volume on the TV would have to be far higher, and the lights were not allowed to go out no matter what. It seems obvious, but yes, at this point I had accepted the fact that I would have to spend a fourth night in the haunted hospital room. Despite demands for a room exchange, there were no other patients willing to trade, or at least that's what I was told by the nurse on patrol when I asked for it again. No such requests could be filled, and of course the doctors wanted to keep me in the hospital. I was getting worse, after all, and they had no way of knowing why that was the case. I did consider sleeping during the day and trying to then stay awake the night instead. I truly did, but I was afraid that I'd oversleep, or that the shade would steal my day, too, leaving me no time to avoid it at all. Instead, I'd have to stay awake until my levels were stable enough for the doctors to allow me to leave, be that forever. If necessary, I was willing to stay awake until the day I died, if it meant avoiding the creature of my waking nightmares. That day, not a single cloud appeared on the sky of my hometown. Not one. The sun shone brighter than I have ever seen it do at any time, at any place, ever, as if to encourage me that I could do it, I could defeat the non-mortal that was to show itself for me unless I were to succeed. It wasn't a particularly warm day, but it was the brightest one in a long time, if not the brightest day ever. Even if it were just an illusion. Nurses came, and nurses went. I had 2 checkups from my doctor that day, to see exactly how my levels were progressing, but they seemed to remain pretty fixed throughout the day, I was told. The nurses mostly made sure that everything was as it was supposed to be, and that I wasn't dying. It seemed to be a pretty uneventful day for them, yet for me it was the longest, and probably worst day of my life, and there was nobody I could tell that would believe me. I was stuck in a room with a devilish demon of darkness, and there was not a single thing I could do about it. Not one thing. Eventually, however, even the longest of days has to come to an end, and the sun started drifting over the horizon as I readied myself for the mental battle that would come to define my time spent in hospital room 407, with the white spot on the wall. I prayed a prayer, turned on the TV, increased the volume, and did my best at keeping my eyes locked upon the television screen, rather than moving them over to that spot on the wall where it had all begun. Needless to say, my best was far from good enough, and every few minutes my gaze would move over to that spot, where something must have stuck so badly to the wall that they had to paint it over. Trying to focus on the screen more by, again, increasing the volume level, didn't do much good, mostly serving to annoy my ears more than actually making me concentrate. Although maybe that could actually be called serving its purpose, since that annoyance would make it more difficult for me to think about the spot. I didn't think of that, at the time, of course, and was stupid enough to think that it was better to decrease the volume back to the level it had been at before. The fact that I have never met anyone that I find more idiotic than I was at that time probably isn't surprising. Waking up, I wasn't shocked to see that I was in a pitch-black room, nor was I particularly surprised that there was an invisible weight on my chest, neck and limbs. If anything, I was annoyed at myself for once again having failed to stay awake the second night in a row, especially under the circumstances I was experiencing. No, the only thing that in any way made me react in the fashion you'd expect was what I could see at the end of my bed. The inhumanoid was standing right where it had stood last night, chanting its truths as I wept and finally fell asleep, and when I saw it I was as disgusting and scared as it had made me for 3 nights now, and the stench following it made me want to vomit, yet I was unable to. It wasn't saying anything, so at least I was free from that hoarse not quite voice, but in the situation at hand, that didn't feel as much of a pro. Watching over me, not unlike a parody of a mother keeping watch over her child, that thing kept grinning at me, just as it had for the 3 previous nights, and just as it would keep on doing for this 4th night. A gaze that saw everything, which I couldn't look away from due to my own fear, and would see my attempt to escape before it was even executed. It didn't need to keep watch, it merely did, as a joke from it to me, a gift that it knew I would despise. Invisible chains that had kept me locked to this bed for 4 nights, pushing on top of my skin, almost digging into it, were all a part of the Shade's game, no more than simple pets of its that made its job easier, gave it more time to mock and taunt me. That creature, which stank of age and undeath, and would push that same stink onto me, a stink that was far too deep to disperse from something as simple as a shower or a bath. Washing does not take away the stink of truth. My eyes were locked on that entity without body or soul as it took its first step of the night, the first step towards my side, and my life. A stance almost like a human's was now used to move forward, and if you were to give it a human body it might actually have been able to use it at this point. Not that it would have any reason to use a mortal body, as such concepts were not of its understanding. In that thing's world, there was only light and darkness. Black and white. No more, no less. 1 step, and I could feel the claw-like hand, composed solely of darkness, just barely touch my leg over the blanket, covering me, a childish glimmer of hope to keep me safe. Obviously for naught, as I knew then already, but it did mean I didn't have to directly experience that eternally cold hand, a coldness that seemed to flame within. I've heard that victims of frostbite and hypothermia often start to feel incredibly warm, and that's not unlike what being touched by the entity felt like. A burning cold. Slowly, it took 1 step, and then another, and then a third, making sure to keep its finger claw dragging on top of my body, just so I could experience what it would do to me later, a tease as to what my life would be like after it was done to me. If that would even be considered a form of life, that is. Its devilish grin, mocking me, telling me to do something about it, knowing full well that it was now the one carrying my sentence. I could do nothing about it, and to that thing, my life was no more than a toy that it could play around with as it wished. Just like a cat plays around with its prey before finally killing it, the Shade was playing around with me, the one difference being that I knew full well that there was, without fail, absolutely nothing I could do about it, and that my life was now carried in its hands. That grin, laughing at me, those eyes, taking the entirety of my hate and fear in, those nostrils, mocking my need for oxygen, and that claw, showing that no weapon I could ever get my hands on would do any good against it. A body that the darkness didn't even need, and had just hastily conjured for the sole purpose of playing with me. Maybe I should have felt honored, but that was far from my main concern at the time. 1 small step at a time, every single one filling me with more dread than the last one did, every single second worse than the one before, each, at that point, the so far worst moment of my life. Whether I believe in God or not is irrelevant, for at that point I knew for a fact that He had left me the moment I entered room 407. Within its walls lies nothing but the collective darkness, hatred, fear and evil of its residents, and the death and life that the hospital has ever carried. 1 small, oh so incredibly small step, and my body filled with more terror than I had ever felt before as that grinning face made of red light came just an inch closer at a time. Each inch, that light just getting 1 tiny bit closer, yet a distance that felt like it had come an eternity nearer me. As I've said, I do not believe in miracles, but dear Lord did I pray for one at that time. I prayed and prayed and prayed, and yet that creature, that entity of shadows and darkness came closer, and I was completely and utterly unable to do the faintest thing about it. The red lights making up its face illuminating the world around it, yet doing none to illuminate the darkness that made up its body. A body that countered the very laws of physics, a body which could never make sense to the mind of a mere mortal, a body that could ruin minds if need be. Time never stops. Despite how long something might feel, no matter whether something feels like an eternity or not, time does, in fact, never, ever stop. It never has, and it never will. At least not when you need it to, as I learned on that fourth night in the room of my nightmares. If it took an eternity for the shade to get from the foot of my bed to my side, then that eternity eventually ended, and I was instead faced with an entity made up of compressed darkness standing by my side. For an eternity that felt several times longer than the eternity it had taken for that presence to move to my side, it stood at my side, provoking and ridiculing me. Those eyes that looked like the bloody holes of someone whose eyes had been ripped out, those stab-like slits meant to appear as nostrils, and that ever-haunting disdainful grin, glowing with the hatred of all times that have ever been and histories have yet to come. An eternal creature, solely here to make my life a literal living hell within room 407, the room where nothing living matters. With contempt, those derisive eyes stared down upon me, lessening my worth in its mind, if it even had such a thing as a mind, and the same effect moved onto my own. In my own mind, I am none, as long as that thing tells me to think like that. Never have I wished for a quick and swift death more than when I realized that that singularity of shadow held more control over me more than I did myself. A wish for my own loss of life as fast as possible, with as little pain as a death can hold, and yet that mocking gaze just kept watch over me, like a bird sitting still, watching its prey. Suddenly, faster than I could ever pick up with any sense, the existence grabbed my wrist through the blanket. It pushed its claw hand onto my wrist through the cover with such a force that just that single grip would probably give me a bruise, but even more than that I could feel an incredible heat radiating from that previously sub-zero temperature claw. Although the invisible shackles most likely would have made it impossible for me to move my arm even had the shade not been holding me stuck, I pulled and pulled, but remained completely unfruitful in my attempts in loosening its grip around me. I still wasn't screaming, I don't know why, and just endured the burning heat without expressing much in the form of response to it, almost as if I had gone through so much at this point that it did not matter. Maybe it didn't. Grip melting into my flesh, hatred flaming invisibly both through its eyes and its grasp, and to me it no longer mattered. Within my own cognizance, I was already dead, so there was no longer any use in caring about what it would do to me at this point. It could as well burn my body, melt it down to a substance staining the bed, if that was its wish. It's not like I had to care. I had given up at this point, is what I mean to say. What was I to do in the face of a fate worse than death? Then it happened, the one thing that changed everything. That disgusting and life-sucking shadow of reality kissed me. It bent down towards my face at a speed my eyes could barely register, and before I knew it, I felt a weight upon my lips that no matter what the body was could obviously be no one else but a kiss. Despite the facts that it had no visible lips, or anything like it, I could feel exactly that pressing against my own, a coldness unlike anything I'd ever experienced before and have experienced since. A kiss of death, and more. "You hold my blessing," it whispered, doing its best at talking in a human language, trying so hard that I could easily pick up the words. For a first attempt, it was incredibly well done, I must say, and it wasn't actually far from a tone that could sound human if you weren't paying too much attention to it. Pulling back from me, and once again looking down at me, just as it had before, its mouth went down into the most similar it could do to a warm smile. "We'll meet again." With that, my vision went black, as the entity dispersed back into the darkness of room 407, the shadows that had seemed thicker from the very first night returning to their original state, just as it should have from the very beginning. The inhumanoid disappeared, finished with its task of disturbing the little peace I might have had during my stay at the hospital. I woke up the next morning, just as any morning, nothing special at all about that morning that made it unlike any other, with one difference. Any signs of the asthma attack that had put me in the hospital in the first place was completely gone. Actually, that's missing a little bit. Any signs of my asthma to begin with vanished after that. My immune system got better, not once having gotten sick since my stay in room 407, and my body's gotten stronger overall, too. It wouldn't be an overstatement to say that I have never had any trouble lifting something I've tried to lift since that kiss from the shade, as if my body would just make itself stronger as it needed to. Now, I'd just see this as the powers of modern medicine, just as I'd prefer to see all the events that this story has detailed as temporary insanity, if it weren't for one thing. One little detail which destroys the whole idea that I might have imagined this whole story, this whole little hospital stay of mine, that I was intoxicated on some drug the nurses gave me to calm down after a panic attack that first night. That little detail, my friend, is the black mark that I've had on my wrist since that stay in room 407. A scar which grows ever so slightly every time I do something that would have exhausted my body before that hospital stay. A burn mark that goes across the entire wrist, and which burns just a little more every single night. And now, besides the fact that that mark now goes across my wrist and burns down to the very core of my hand, I also feel slightly bad about the red marks that have started appearing on my bedroom wall.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.